Determining whether plenum-rated cabling is required involves understanding what constitutes a plenum space according to building codes and electrical standards. A plenum is defined as a compartment or chamber to which one or more air ducts are connected, forming part of the air distribution system. This space is used for the movement of environmental air. In the scenario described, the area above the drop ceiling, especially with air returns present, strongly suggests that it functions as a plenum. Air returns indicate that this space is being used to circulate air for heating, ventilation, and air conditioning, also known as HVAC. If the space above the drop ceiling is indeed being used for air circulation, then the use of plenum-rated cabling is necessary to comply with fire safety regulations. Non-plenum cables, when burned, can release toxic smoke and fumes, which can be circulated throughout the building via the HVAC system. Plenum-rated cables are designed to be fire-resistant and produce minimal smoke and fumes when burned, thus reducing the risk of toxic exposure in the event of a fire. The National Electrical Code, also known as NEC, Article 300.22, C covers wiring in ducts, plenums, and other spaces used for environmental air. It specifies the types of wiring methods permitted in these spaces. For communications cabling, such as data and phone wiring, the NEC typically requires the use of listed plenum cables, also known as CMP-rated cables. These cables have been tested and certified to meet specific fire safety standards for plenum applications. The absence of a full-height wall separating the office space with the drop ceiling from the warehouse area further supports the argument for plenum-rated cabling. The open space allows for air to circulate freely between the two areas, potentially drawing smoke and fumes from a fire in the warehouse area into the plenum space above the office. Given the potential risks associated with using non-plenum cables in a plenum space, it is essential to adhere to the NEC requirements and specify plenum-rated cables for the project. Using non-plenum cable where plenum cable is required would be a violation of the code and a potential fire hazard. Factors that support the determination that a space is a plenum include firstly, the presence of air returns in the drop ceiling. Secondly, the absence of a sealed barrier between the drop ceiling area and other spaces. Thirdly, the intended use of the space for air circulation. If these factors are present, then the space is likely a plenum and plenum-rated cabling is required. It's also important to consult with local building inspectors or fire marshals to confirm the specific requirements for the project location. They can provide guidance on interpreting the NEC and other applicable codes. Here is more about cabling. The NEC defines specific cable types for different applications, including communications circuits. For plenum spaces, the cable must be listed as suitable for use in environmental air spaces. These cables are identified with the suffix MP in their listing, such as CMP for communications plenum cable. The CMP rating signifies that the cable meets the fire resistance and low smoke emission requirements specified in the NEC. In addition to the NEC, other standards may apply, such as those developed by organizations such as Underwriters Laboratories, also known as UL, and the Telecommunications Industry Association, also known as TIA. These standards provide detailed specifications for cable performance and safety. When selecting plenum-rated cables, it is essential to ensure that they are properly listed and labeled. The cable should have markings indicating its CMP rating and other relevant information, such as its voltage and temperature ratings. The cable should also be installed in accordance with the manufacturer's instructions and the NEC requirements. Improper installation can compromise the cable's fire resistance and increase the risk of fire. The type of communication cable being run also influences what to use. For example, coaxial cable has different ratings from twisted pair cable, which has different ratings from fiber optic cable. Each of these kinds of cables may have their own specific codes or ratings, but will be preceded by the prefix letters. In addition to fire safety considerations, plenum-rated cables offer other benefits, such as improved signal performance and durability. Plenum cables are typically constructed with higher quality materials and shielding to reduce interference and ensure reliable data transmission. They are also more resistant to moisture and other environmental factors, making them suitable for use in harsh conditions. Therefore, the use of plenum-rated cables can improve the overall performance and reliability of the communications infrastructure. The cost of plenum-rated cables is typically higher than that of non-plenum cables. However, the added cost is justified by the improved fire safety and performance benefits. The cost difference is also relatively small compared to the overall cost of the project. Also consider the implications of not using plenum-rated cable. Firstly, there is a risk of a violation of the code. Secondly, there is a financial liability in case of a fire. Thirdly, there is a criminal liability in the event of death. In addition to plenum-rated cabling, other components of the communications infrastructure, such as patch panels, connectors, and enclosures, should also be suitable for use in plenum spaces. These components should be listed and labeled as plenum-rated to ensure that they meet the fire safety requirements. It's also important to consider the routing of the cables in the plenum space. Cables should be supported and secured properly to prevent them from sagging or becoming damaged. Cables should also be kept away from heat sources and other potential hazards. The specific requirements for cable routing are outlined in the NEC and other applicable standards. When working with plenum spaces, it is essential to take precautions to protect the health and safety of workers. Plenum spaces can be dusty and contaminated with mold, asbestos, and other hazardous materials. Workers should wear appropriate personal protective equipment, also known as PPE, such as respirators, gloves, and eye protection, to minimize their exposure to these hazards. Workers should also be trained on the proper procedures for working in plenum spaces. These procedures are outlined in OSHA, also known as Occupational Safety and Health Administration, regulations and other safety standards. It is also important to consider the impact of the communications infrastructure on the building's energy efficiency. Cables and other components can generate heat, which can increase the building's cooling load. Plenum-rated cables typically have lower heat dissipation characteristics than non-plenum cables, which can help to reduce energy consumption. The NEC provides guidance on selecting cables and components that minimize energy consumption. It is also important to consider the future needs of the communications infrastructure. The cabling system should be designed to accommodate future growth and technological advancements. Plenum-rated cables are typically more durable and have a longer lifespan than non-plenum cables, which can help to reduce the need for future upgrades. The cabling system should also be flexible and scalable to accommodate changes in the building's layout or occupancy. In summary, determining whether plenum-rated cabling is required depends on the specific characteristics of the space and the applicable building codes and electrical standards. If the space is used for environmental air, then plenum-rated cabling is required. It is essential to consult with local building inspectors or fire marshals to confirm the specific requirements for the project location. Failure to comply with these requirements can result in safety risks and code violations. Furthermore, it is important to understand the different types of plenum cables available and their respective applications. For instance, CMP, communications plenum cable, is commonly used for data and voice communications, while FBLP, fire protective signaling plenum cable, is used for fire alarm systems. Each cable type has specific fire resistance and smoke emission characteristics that make it suitable for its intended use. It is also essential to verify that the plenum cables are properly certified by a recognized testing laboratory, such as UL or ETL, electrical testing labs. Certification ensures that the cables meet the required safety standards and performance specifications. The certification mark should be clearly visible on the cable jacket. In addition to the cable itself, the installation practices also play a crucial role in ensuring fire safety in plenum spaces. Cables should be installed in a neat and organized manner, using appropriate supports and fasteners. Cables should not be bundled too tightly, as this can restrict airflow and increase the risk of overheating. Cables should also be protected from physical damage, such as sharp edges or abrasive surfaces. The NEC provides detailed guidelines on cable installation practices in plenum spaces. It is important to follow these guidelines carefully to ensure that the cabling system is safe and reliable. The NEC also addresses the issue of abandoned cables in plenum spaces. Abandoned cables are cables that are no longer in use but remain in the plenum space. These cables can pose a fire hazard, as they can contribute to the spread of fire and smoke. The NEC requires that abandoned cables be removed from plenum spaces to minimize this risk. The removal of abandoned cables should be performed by qualified personnel who are familiar with the NEC requirements and safety procedures. When planning a cabling project in a commercial building, it is essential to consider the long-term maintenance and upkeep of the cabling system. Regular inspection should be conducted to identify any potential problems such as damaged cables or loose connections. Maintenance should also include cleaning the cabling system to remove dust and debris that can accumulate over time. Proper maintenance can help to extend the lifespan of the cabling system and ensure its continued performance and safety. In addition to the technical aspects of plenum cabling, it is also important to consider the legal and contractual implications. The specification of plenum-rated cabling should be clearly documented in the project specifications and contracts. The contractor should be responsible for ensuring that the cabling system complies with the applicable codes and standards. The client should also retain the right to inspect the cabling system to verify compliance. Proper documentation and contractual agreements can help to avoid disputes and ensure that the cabling system is installed correctly. If there is any doubt about whether a space is a plenum, it is always best to err on the side of caution and specify plenum-rated cabling. The added cost of plenum-rated cabling is minimal compared to the potential risks associated with using non-plenum cabling in a plenum space. In addition to the above considerations, it is important to stay up to date on the latest changes to the NEC and other applicable codes and standards. Building codes and electrical standards are constantly evolving to reflect new technologies and safety concerns. It is essential to stay informed of these changes to ensure that cabling projects comply with the latest requirements. There are several resources available for staying up to date on building codes and electrical standards. These resources include trade publications, industry conferences, and online training courses. It is also helpful to network with other professionals in the industry to share knowledge and best practices. By staying informed and connected, cabling professionals can ensure that they are providing the best possible service to their clients. The decision to use plenum-rated cabling should not be based solely on cost. Safety should be the top priority. Using non-plenum cable in a plenum space can have serious consequences, including fines, legal liability, and, most importantly, risk to human life. Therefore, it is essential to carefully consider all of the factors involved and make an informed decision based on the best available information. If you are unsure about whether a space is a plenum or whether plenum-rated cabling is required, it is always best to consult with a qualified professional. A qualified professional can assess the space, review the applicable codes and standards, and provide guidance on the appropriate cabling solution. Consulting with a qualified professional can help to ensure that your cabling project is safe, compliant, and reliable.